Who here is familiar with the idea of the 5 realities? No? This gets a little bit more involved. We think that we live in a physical world. This is like the world of sciences, action, reaction, cause and effect, right? You know, car slams into wall breaks, car breaks, that sort of stuff, right? And it's true. There's a strong physical component to how we live lives. But really, it's not the only thing that drives our lives. For example, we probably live more in a world of ideas, an intellectual reality, than we live in a physical one. Why? Well, let's put it this way. Some things mean things to us. We'll try and work things out. We have a lot of time spending in our heads trying to predict what's going to happen. And it may cause an impact on the physical reality. It may change our behavior and so on. But there's still ideas, right? So, for example, when we talk about things like love and excitement and nation, those are all intellectual concepts, right? We might think there are physical constraints, for example, moving in and out of a country. You have to show your passport. Some people need a visa, some people don't, and so on, right? They seem physical constraints, but actually they're intellectual constraints. We've constrained the physical space because some people decided this is ours and this is yours, and you can't come into ours unless you have a little bit of paper that says you can do so. Do you see how that works? So there's a lot of intellectual things that are going on that are interfering with our physical reality, and vice versa. The emotional reality is one that drives huge amounts of stuff. This is really the place of states, emotions, and so on. This drives our behavior, right? Anyone here ever do something that they don't really want to be doing, but they can't kind of help themselves? For example, I don't know, let's say you want to go on a diet, but you end up finding yourself in that fridge eating the chocolate cake anyways, right? Of course, no emotions are involved, are they? No. Right? No. It's just, and it just seems like a good idea at the time, right? So our emotional realities, they drive our behaviors, which in turn changes our physical environment. See how that works? Now, emotions work on a different set of logics than the physical reality does, don't they? The law of physics do not apply to our emotions, do they? Nope. And the same is true of intellectual concepts. Logic does not necessarily apply to physics. It just is what it is, unless, of course, you're using that as your base thing. And then we have a very interesting one, the symbolic reality. Now, we might not think that we're very symbolic as a people, but honestly, I would encourage you to think again. We're surrounded by symbols. Religion is surrounded by symbols, whether it's the Christian faith with the cross and all these things, or the Jewish faith, we have the Star of David and other symbols that represent things, right? If you go to nations, if a nation is particularly patriotic, for example, in the USA, people are very proud of their flag, they fly it everywhere, it means something. But if you think about it, it's a piece of cloth. It's just paint on a piece of cloth. It's the same as the suit I'm wearing, essentially. Yet, no one would think that people would be willing to die to protect a suit. Yet they're willing to die to protect a flag. Why? It's not the cloth that they're protecting, it's what it symbolizes. It's what it means. See how that works? The symbolic reality, again, affects your emotional experience, it affects your intellectual experience, and ultimately it'll affect your physical experience as a result. Does that make sense? Driving them all is the one I find the most interesting. This one here, attention, is kind of like, if there's such a thing as pure reality, I suspect attention would be it. Because it's not influenced by the other ones. It influences the other one. Without attention, physical reality doesn't really have an impact on you. It might indirectly, but then again, it only impacts on you on those things you have attention for, right? So if you had no attention, if you had no way of sensing the outside world, well, unless something made you feel uncomfortable, in which case your attention is on the discomfort, that's what you're sensing and that's what's affecting you. Does that make sense? Same thing with intellectual. If you have an idea that there is no attention on, whether the attention is conscious or unconscious, of course, that'll make an impact too, then it has no bearing on you. There's millions of ideas out there that you don't even know about, and they don't impact on you. What impacts on you are the things that you do know about, that you are aware of. Make sense? Now, it might be a consequence of something else that's going somewhere else that you're not aware of, but you see where I'm going with this? It's really the attention that decides whether or not something is working for you or not. And your attention can really cycle through any of the other realities. The physical reality can only indirectly affect the intellectual one, and the intellectual one only indirectly affects the emotions. You know, most people don't reason themselves out of emotions, or if you do, it'll take a bit of a longer time to do so. Make sense? Yet your attention fits in every single one of those realities. So attention is really the core thing that we work with as hypnotists, because they allow us to construct all the other realities and take energy away from one and more into the other, and so on, right? So for example, when we're dealing with pain control, you'll be moving out of the physical reality and you'll be working at the symbolic level or the emotional level. These things have a lot to do with pain control. The intellectual level, you only work enough to neutralize this, to prevent the pain from maintaining, because this is what maintains the pain, because it's real. Your intellect tells you it's real. And until people give up the idea that the pain is real, they can't have pain control. They can't have the numbing of a limb. When they do give up the idea, well, then they can have pain control that exceeds what even our strongest medication can currently do. Right? So does this sort of idea of different realities make sense to you? You can influence people on any one of the 5 levels. Typically, you'll use the attention in order to influence the other 4. In terms of the influence game, again, you can influence all of these areas. Right now, we're going to focus on the emotional one, because emotions drive behaviors. Emotions will also change the way people think. So it's an easy one to change. As well, you should know your states, your emotional states. Do you know how long they last? Between 60 and 90 seconds, right? On the outside. And that's to do with the neurochemistry that runs through your body and so on. If someone is in an emotional state for longer than 90 seconds, they are doing something to recreate it or intensify it. In other words, you imagine like a castle with like people pouring boiling oil over people, just nice grim image there. Someone has to fill the pot up again so you can pour more down the wall. Right? Once that pot's been poured, that's it. It's over. It takes a certain amount of time for it to drop, and then that's it. It's done. So meanwhile, someone else is busy filling the pot up again to have another go. And in that moment is your moment of opportunity. Emotions can change very quickly as a result if you catch the right moment. And that's when like all these dramatic things can happen and so on. Does that make sense? So we're going to focus primarily on the emotional level, just because it's the easiest one to focus on. Tomorrow we'll talk about some of the intellectual things, but realize that really you can do this stuff at any of the levels. We're just going to focus on one of them to make the point more easily, and so you can get a grasp on the fundamentals of it, and then start expanding that skill to other areas. Make sense? Okay.